snap my fingers and pretend that all of that nonsense didn't happen and that we're not 6 minutes late for first chapter fun. Dear me, I'm letting my Swiss roots down here by not being on time. Let me just turn that a little bit on Twitter. And yes, we are live. We are live on Facebook. I believe there's sound. If there isn't, I'm just going to quietly go and scream into a pillow. Or maybe not so quietly. Let me just make sure. Yes, I'm there. I see myself there. And I even see the comments coming up. So we are ready, finally, for first chapter fun. Carolyn says, yay. Ali says, yeah, I can hear you. And we're just going to pretend that none of that ever happened. And I didn't have to, on live camera, crawl underneath my desk and fix my stupid webcam. But here we are. It is 12:30, well, 12:37 really, PM Eastern time. And that means it's time for first chapter fun. So welcome everyone. If this is the first time you've joined, this is the place. Oh, my name's Hannah Mary McKinnon. I mean, you know, you should know me by now. No, I'm just kidding. If you don't know me, my name's Hannah Mary McKinnon. I'm an author, and First Chapter Fun is where my fellow partner in fictional crime, Hank Philip Ryan, and I read the first chapter of a different book live, not on one, not on two, but on 3 different platforms, because we're, I don't know, gluttons for punishment, and, you know, it's kind of a extreme sport, as you saw this morning by me crawling underneath my desk for you. So today we are reading from Lisa Unger's brilliant book. Let me make sure that you can all see that. Yes, see it on everywhere. Confessions on the 7:45. And let me tell you, this book is brilliant. It's not out yet. It's out on the 6th of October, so you don't have to wait very long. But I got my sticky mitts on a advanced review or advanced reader copy, or a galley, we call them also. And it's just brilliant. And we love Lisa. Lisa's just the best. So I'm going to introduce you to Lisa. If you're not familiar with her work, she's written, I think this is book 18. So where have you been if you haven't heard of her yet? I'm sure you have. But before I introduce you to Lisa and to the book, a couple of things. Sometimes, I'm going to cross my fingers and say that the technical issues for today, we had them right at the beginning, so there shouldn't be any more. Ho, ho, ho. Someone just said there's still no audio on Facebook, but other people are saying that you can hear me. So, sorry, the woman who walks. It might be you, not me. So if one of the platforms boots me out, if Twitter or Instagram or Facebook cuts me off and chucks me out, I will go back to that platform and start the recording again. But fingers crossed. We all had the joy and the pleasure of me crawling underneath my desk to fix my webcam, and that will be the only technical issue that we have today. If you've not joined First Chapter Fun before, as I mentioned, this is the place where twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday, Hank Philip Ryan and I read the first chapter of a different book. Not ours, although they do feature when we have a new release, but generally or always, 99% of the time, they are books by other authors. All kinds of different books. We do have a lot of thrillers, because that is what Hank and I write, and we know a lot of people in that space, but we also have historical fiction, we've had sci-fi, we've had romance, we've had all kinds of books. So your to-be read list will be out of control, and you'll never have to look for book recommendations again, because we've got your back. So this is what we've been doing. This is today episode 92. That's right, 92, episode 92, which is just incredible. And we're so thrilled to be here and to partner up with all of these phenomenal authors and their publishers, because of course we always read with their permission. All right, now, to today's novel, Lisa Unger's Confessions on the 7:45. Not right now, but make a note of Lisa's Instagram handle, which is L.A. Unger. So L.A. Unger. Because there's a giveaway going on her Instagram, and you can win, you can get your sticky mitts on a copy of this book. All you need to do is go over to Lisa's Instagram, not now, once we're done reading, and you'll be able to enter for a chance to win a copy of this absolutely brilliant book. Look at that cover as well, and just the title as well, Confessions on the 745. Ooh, who confesses what? Well, I'm about to let you know a couple of things. So let me tell you about Lisa. Lisa Unger is the New York Times and internationally best-selling author of 18 novels. That's 18 novels, including Confessions on the 745, which publishes on the 6th of October, so not long at all. With millions of readers worldwide and books published in 26 languages, Lisa is widely regarded as a master of suspense. I concur wholeheartedly. Her critically acclaimed books have been voted Best of the Year or top picks by The Today Show, Good Morning America, Entertainment Weekly, Amazon, IndieBound, and others. Her essays have appeared in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, NPR, and Travel and Leisure, or Leisure, if you prefer. She lives on the west coast of Florida with her family, and this is where you can find out all about Lisa. So her website is lisaunger.com. On Instagram, don't forget the giveaway, L.A. Unger. On Twitter, she's Lisa Unger, and on Facebook, author Lisa Unger. So you'll be able to find her absolutely everywhere. So I see lots of people joining, lots of comments. Carla says, thanks for having the giveaway, Lisa. Lisa says she's blushing, which reminds me, Lisa's watching, which is really cool. One of this is such a fun thing to do, the whole first chapter fun, but to also have the authors join is just brilliant. A bit scary because you don't want to butcher their words or do them a disservice by reading them or fluffing the lines or whatever. But it's so much fun to have the authors join. So you can ask Lisa questions either on Instagram or on Facebook. Just pop a question there. On Facebook, the questions will stay. On Instagram, once we move it from live to our feed, to our IGTV, they disappear. Every week we say, come on Instagram, sort it out. And they haven't listened to us yet. So if you do want to ask Lisa a question on Instagram, you kind of have to do it now. Whereas on Facebook, you can always do it later. So just say hello to lots of you. Susan says there's sound on Facebook. Fantastic. Katie Taller, we read from Dark August, Canadian bestseller, a couple of weeks ago. Carolyn Howard says she's super excited about this. The pitch for this book is outstanding. And the book is outstanding, let me tell you. All right, so shall we get started? It's quite a long chapter. And sometimes we edit them a little bit and take some stuff out, but I didn't. So I will treat you to all 10 and a bit pages of it. So sit back and relax and let me tell you about Confessions on the 745 by the brilliant Lisa Unger. Best-selling and award-winning author Lisa Unger returns with her best novel yet. Reminiscent of the classic Strangers on a Train, Confessions on the 745 is a riveting psychological thriller that begins with a chance encounter on a commuter train and shows you why you should never, ever make conversation with strangers. Be careful who you tell your darkest secrets. Selena Murphy is commuting home from her job in the city when the train stalls out on the tracks. She strikes up a conversation with a beautiful stranger in the next seat, and their connection is fast and easy. The woman introduces herself as Martha and confesses that she's been stuck in an affair with her boss. Selena, in turn, confesses that she suspects her husband is sleeping with the nanny. When the train arrives at Selena's station, the two women part ways, presumably never to meet again. But days later, Selena's nanny disappears. Soon, Selena finds her once perfect life upended. As she's pulled into the mystery of the missing nanny, and as the fractures in her marriage grow deeper, Selena begins to wonder, who was Martha, really? But she is hardly prepared for what she'll discover. Expertly plotted and reminiscent of the timeless classic Strangers on a Train, Confessions on the 745 is a stunning web of lies and deceit and a gripping thriller about the delicate facades we create around our lives. Doesn't that just sound absolutely brilliant? And it is. I can vouch for it. It is absolutely brilliant. It's fantastic. Confessions on the 7:45, out on October the 6th. And Tracy says, uh-oh, missing nanny. Oh, she was sleeping with the husband, come on. All right, so Kimberly just said, can you please set up time every night to read us a chapter? Bedtime Stories by Hannah. That sounds like fun. But for now, I will read you chapter 1 of Confessions on the 7:45 by Lisa Unger. Here we go. Chapter 1. Selina. Selina loved the liminal spaces, those precious slivers of time between the roles she played in her life. She missed the 5:40 train because her client meeting ran long, knowing before she even left the conference room table that there was no way she'd be home in time for dinner with her husband Graham and their 2 maniac boys, Stephen and Oliver. The wild hours afterwards, showers, pyjamas, random horseplay, vicious but brief sibling battles, television maybe if she could get either of them to sit still a minute, that concluded in story time would have to unfold without her. Selina didn't often work late. She made a point to be home on time. Chaotic as their evenings often were, that was the best part of her day. But when she did miss the train that night, it created a space that hadn't been there before. Just a little over 2 hours between the 5:40, which she normally took, and the 7:45, which she intended to catch after finishing up a few things at the office. In that gap, she could feel herself expand. She wasn't working, she wasn't mothering, she just was. She could think. And truth be told, Selina did have some things she needed to think about. These things were a white noise in the back of her mind. She slipped out of the cab she'd taken back to the office into the cool autumn evening. The noise of the city washed over her, the manic rush of people on their way home after a long day. Then she stepped into the hush of the quiet lobby with its marble floors and gleaming walls. Selina nodded to the doorman who knew her, then swiped her card through the gates, up the elevator, alone. Here her heart started thumping, mouth going dry. Her bag was too heavy, the tote pulling down on her tight shoulder muscles. She hadn't missed the train on purpose. She really hadn't wanted to cut the client off as he went on and on. But the office was empty. The literary agency had a small staff, most people with families. Many of the parents left before school pickup, then worked at home in the afternoons. Beth, her boss, also her lifelong best friends, had things set up like that, so that people could work well and take care of their families. Imagine that. It was the rare, humane workplace. She didn't bother flipping on the light in her office, enjoying the glittering downtown view through her big window. A rush of heat to her cheeks as she dropped her bag. She shifted off her jacket and sat in front of the computer and took a deep breath before opening the lid on her laptop. It was after 6:15 now. The boys would have had their dinner. If Selina knew their nanny Geneva and the efficiency with which she ran the show, Oliver and Stephen would also be showered and in jammies. She probably had them settled in front of the TV already. Selina leaned back in her ergonomic chair, felt its pleasant tilt. She hadn't planted or hidden the camera. She'd just moved it from the boys' bedroom and told neither Graham nor Geneva about it. She paused another second. Her desk was cluttered with framed pictures of the boys and Graham, drawings from school, a ceramic owl Oliver had made at art camp. She picked up the glazed, misshapen thing. He'd carved his name in the clay bottom. She touched the ridges of the wobbly O, the backwards E. Somewhere she heard a vacuum cleaner running. Her wedding picture, where her smile beamed and Graham was dashing in his classic tux. He'd whispered to her while the photographer snapped away, dirty things, funny things. Then, "This is the best day of my life." His breath in her ear, his arms around her, Her whole body tingled with joy, with desire. Nearly 10 years ago now. God, it was a heartbeat, a blink, a single breath drawn and released. She put the photo down. Then she clicked on the app that would allow her to watch on her laptop the video feed from the camera she'd placed in the boys' playroom. It took a moment for the image to load. When it did, she was not surprised by what she saw. Graham, her husband, was fucking Geneva, her nanny, on the activity rug that Selina and Graham had carefully selected together at IKEA. The volume was down, so she was spared their grunting and moaning. When had she started to suspect? About 2 weeks ago. She happened to catch a glance between Graham and Geneva. Something that small, a millisecond, a micro-expression. No, she thought. Surely not. But she'd moved the camera. This was the second time she'd watched them. A weird calm came over her, a kind of apathetic distance from the whole thing. Geneva wasn't that hot, Selina thought, as she watched the young woman who had shiny wheat-coloured hair and flushed cheeks. Selina leaned closer to the screen to see the girl more clearly. Attractive, certainly, but not much more so than Selina. Okay. The other woman was a bit younger, but only by a few years. Maybe there was a softness to her that Selina lacked, a freshness. But she was nothing special. In fact, Geneva's just slightly above average looks was a point that Selina had taken into consideration when hiring her as a nanny. Geneva was reasonably attractive, smart, personable career... Geneva was a reasonably attractive, smart, personable career childcare professional with a long list of glowing references. She was no bombshell. No glowing 20-something with glossed lips and inappropriately placed tattoos she would later regret. Most women, Selina included, knew better than to bring some nubile hottie into her home on a regular basis. It just wasn't good business. Besides, Geneva was known to Selina, coveted in fact. They'd met on the playground during Selina's first year home with the boys. Work, the commute, the race to pick up from preschool, the balancing act that never quite balanced. It had worn her to a nub. She and her husband Graham decided that she should stay home for a time, indefinitely. They could afford that. Graham made good money. There wouldn't be Range Rovers and trips to Tahoe every spring break, but they would be fine. Selina had loved the way Geneva was with the Tucker boys, Ryan and Chad. She was sweet but firm, prepared but not anal. The boys listened to her. "Eyes on me," she'd say brightly, and so it was. Geneva wasn't like the other nannies Selina observed at the park. Millennials staring at their phones while their charges ran amok or stared at devices of their own. Geneva chased, pushed swings, played hide and seek. And she was not that hot. Lovely features, the button nose and full lips, dark, heavily lashed doe eyes, buxom but just the tiniest bit pleasantly plump. Broad in the beam, as her father used to say. In a nice way, the way of strong women built for physical labour. Selina was long and slim, a genetic boon for which she was grateful because God knows she didn't have the time anymore to work for it. She turned up the volume a little, listened to them groaning. Did it sound forced? Selina and Geneva had chatted almost daily. Selina's boys, Oliver and Stephen, loved her. "Is Geneva going to be there?" Oliver, her older, sometimes asked as they were headed to the park. "Probably," Selina would answer, wishing that she had someone like Geneva, even just part-time, someone with whom she felt good about leaving her children. But she was happy enough to be home. She didn't miss her publicity job. She'd never had that drive to accomplish that so many of her friends seemed to have. She just wasn't wired that way. She liked working, the independence of it, the camaraderie, the satisfaction of doing something well, the money, but it had never defined her. Graham. "Oh yeah, that's so good." She bumped the volume down again, picked up one of the framed pictures of the boys, gazed into their flushed, joyful faces. Motherhood defined Selina in a way that work hadn't. The idea that she was there for her children, that she cooked their meals and kept their house, their schedules, their doctor appointments and haircuts, that she was there on Carline, at parent-teacher conferences, school Halloween parties. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't always easy. There wasn't a ton of cultural praise for the role, not really. But she found a level of satisfaction in it that she hadn't found elsewhere. Then Graham unexpectedly, well, did anyone ever expect it, lost his job. Not his fault, really. Publishing was shrinking and his big salary was hard to justify in a flailing self-help imprint. That very same week, over cocktails, Selina's good friend Beth surreptitiously offered her a huge job, a licensing director position at Beth's literary agency. Selina's salary would be more than Graham's, plus bonuses. Of course, there would have to be a nanny. Because Graham, well, he wasn't exactly hardwired for caregiving. And finding a job is a full-time job, babe. So, it felt like kismet. When during a chat at the park, the very next day, when Selina was grappling for solutions to their problem, Geneva told Selina that she was about to lose her job. Mrs. Tucker wanted to be home for a couple of years, she said. When things were easy like that, it meant you were in the flow, didn't it? Isn't that what they said these days? It made it easy for Selina to go back to work. It wasn't necessarily what she wanted, but you did what you had to do, right? Graham would find another job. It wasn't forever, though the money was nice. The way the camera was positioned, Selina had the best view of Geneva, who apparently liked to be on top. Was it Selina's imagination? Geneva didn't seem that into it, though from the look on her face and the movement of her lips, she was surely making all the appropriate noises. On the other video feed from the downstairs camera, the boys were slack-jawed in front of troll hunters. They were both scrubbed clean, fed, and in their jammies, waiting for Selina. Geneva was faultless on that count, which was odd to note in a moment like this. But Selina had really appreciated that Geneva wasn't one of those nannies that tried to be the mummy. As soon as Selina returned home in the evenings, Geneva took her proper place, eagerly leaving as soon as she could, sometimes before Selina even came back downstairs from changing. The house was always clean. The boys were usually calm-ish, as calm as boys 5 and 7 could ever be, but they weren't wild like they were when Graham was at the helm. On the rare occasions when Graham had the kids for the day, they'd be filthy, overstimulated, out of routine, desperate for order and a way to calm themselves. Graham thought he was one of them, acting more like a corrupting older sibling than a parent. Like now, as he boned the nanny in the playroom while his young sons watched television downstairs. Why wasn't she angrier about this? It had been a buzz in the back of her head since the first time she watched them 3 days ago, a barely audible thrum, something she pushed away and pushed back, down, down, down. Why wasn't she weeping with anger, the sting of betrayal, jealousy? Why hadn't she raced home after the first discovery, raging, and tossed him out, fired Geneva? That's what anyone would do. But Selina was only aware of a kind of numbness that had settled after the first time, a mean, heartless apathy. But no, beneath that numb layer inside was something else. Now Geneva had her head back in pleasure. Graham wore that helpless look he had right before he was about to climax. He kind of lifted his eyebrows a little, lids closed the way violin players did sometimes when they were wrapped in their music. Selina realised she was clutching the arms of her chair so tightly that her hands ached. She was distantly aware of another feeling, one she deeply pressed down for a good long time, long before this. At some point, after the birth of their second child, Selina had started to dislike her husband. Not all the time, but with shocking intensity. The way he interrupted her when she was talking, hovered over her in the kitchen, micromanaging, the way he claimed to share the housework when he didn't. At all. Surely it was true of all couples who'd been together for a long time. Then he lost his job. Sort of gleefully, it must be said. "Oh, well, I was looking for a change and you said you were missing work." Had she said that? She didn't think so, since she hadn't been missing work. At some point after that, when she'd come home to find him in the same athletic pants 2 days in a row, or when she checked the browser history on the computer and couldn't find a shred of evidence that he'd been looking for a job at all, she started to hate him a little. Then more. That svelte and charming man in the tux, the one who made her laugh and shiver with pleasure. He seemed like someone from a dream she could barely remember. Now, as she leaned in to turn up the volume and heard him moan beneath Geneva, the depth and scope of her hatred was primal. She understood for the first time in her life how people might kill each other. Married people who once loved with passion and devotion, who once cried happy tears at the altar and took a magnificent honeymoon, conceived beautiful children, built a lovely life. That thing lurking inside her, it was pounding to get out. She could hear it, but she couldn't quite feel it. She'd been on autopilot with Graham, going through the motions, rebuffing his advances. If he'd noticed her distance, he hadn't said anything. The truth was, it wasn't the first time he'd cheated, but she thought they'd moved past it. There'd been counselling, tearful promises. She'd, foolishly it seemed, forgiven him and allowed herself to trust him again. "Graham?" The voice startled Selina, snapped her back to the present moment. Geneva had climbed off Selina's husband, already pulled her skirt down. Both times there had been hasty dressing afterwards, averted eyes and frowning faces. At least they had the decency not to lie around after sex, not to luxuriate on the playroom floor. "This has to stop," said Geneva. Selina heard the notes of shame, regret. Good for you, Geneva." Graham had pulled up his pants, sat on the couch and dropped his head into his hands. "I know," he said, voice muffled. "You have a nice family, a beautiful life. This is fucked," Geneva said, her face flushed. "Oh, Geneva," thought Selina crazily, "please don't quit." "I think I should give notice," said Geneva. Graham looked up, stricken. "God, no," he said. "Don't do that." Selina laughed out loud. No, it wasn't love. He wasn't afraid of losing the lovely young Geneva. He was terrified that he'd have to be the primary caregiver for Stephen and Oliver while he looked for another job. "Selina relies on you," he said. "She appreciates you so much." Geneva let out a little laugh, which made Selina smile too before she caught herself. How could Selina still like the woman who she'd just watched fuck her husband? She must be losing her grip. That's what working motherhood did to you. It robbed you of your sanity. "I doubt very much that she'd appreciate this," Geneva said. "No," said Graham. He was pale with shame, rubbing at his jaw. He looked up, and with a strange rush of relief, for a second Selina saw him, her husband, her best friend, the father of her children. He was still there. He wasn't a fiction she'd created. "Then look," said Geneva. She wrapped her arms around her middle, started moving toward the door. "You need to be around less. You need to find a job." "Okay," he said. His hair was wild. It looked like he hadn't shaved in days. What did Geneva see in him, truly? At least he and Selina had a history. Their love affair had been epic. Their travels full of adventure, their home life quite lovely. His infidelities, prior to this one, had been relatively minor. That's what she told herself anyway. Not affairs, exactly. He'd been a decent husband until recently, a provider. He was her best friend, the person she wanted to share everything with. Funny, charming, smart. Even now, in this ugly moment, she wished she could call him to talk about her monstrous husband who was fucking the nanny. He'd certainly know what to do. "Yeah," he said. "I know." "It's not a good idea for men to be home," Geneva went on. "I've seen it a lot in recent years. It's just a bad idea usually." "Yeah," he said again, sounding even more dejected. Poor Geneva. She didn't know she would have to be Graham's nanny too. Selina slammed the lid on her laptop, closed with more force than she'd intended, slipped it into the case, stuffed the case into her bag. She shouldered on her dark wool jacket, feeling a churning in her stomach. She was angry, hurt, betrayed. She knew that. But it was dormant lava churning in a deep chasm within her, pressure building. She'd always been this way, the surface calm, the depths rumbling. She pressed things down, away, until she couldn't. The eruptions were epic. By the time she'd reached the street, a pall had settled over her again. The grey numbness. The city was a crush. She pushed her way through the crowded streets to the subway, then through the bustling station to the platform, just catching her commuter train home. She walked through the cars as the train jostled from the terminal. There, a seat beside a young woman who, for a moment, looked almost familiar. She had straight black hair, mocha eyes, a slight smile on red lips. Svelte, stylish. Even from a distance, Selina instantly liked her. Seeing Selina move toward her, the other woman lifted her tote to make room, and Selina sank into the space beside her, issuing what must have been a telling sigh. She clutched her People magazine in her hand. All she wanted to do was lose herself in those fluffy, glossy pages for the next 40 minutes, a blessed escape from her problems. "Rough day?" asked the stranger. Her expression, a half smile on full lips, a glint in her dark eyes, said that she knew it all, that she'd been there, that she was in on the joke, whatever it was. Selina half laughed. "You have no idea." That was the first chapter of Lisa Unger's brilliant Confessions on the 745. Let me just move that around. There we go. Yep, you can see it on Facebook, you can see it on Instagram and on Twitter. This is such a brilliant book. It had me right from the opening lines. It is fast-paced, so intriguing, and I bet you won't be able to guess the end. At least I definitely couldn't. So this comes out on October the 6th, and we have Secret Enchanted Colour, who just said, "I must go get this book." Yes, you must, you must, you must. So let me tell you, and if you joined in the middle, don't forget, or you might not know, and even if you were here at the beginning, don't forget there's a giveaway going on Instagram. So head on over to LA Unger on Instagram for a chance to win a copy of this brilliant, brilliant book. Thank you, Lisa. She says, "Such a great reading, Hannah." Thank you. I know it was quite long. It was longer than we normally read, but I couldn't help myself. So I hope that's okay. Secret Enchanted Colour says, "I can't wait until the 6th." Carolyn Grayson says that she can't wait, as does Diane. Such a riveting chapter. Diane says, "IKEA will never look the same." We used to have those play mats and we don't have them anymore because the kids are old, and I'm kind of glad. Images. It is such a brilliant book. Let me show you that cover again. There we go. Confessions on the 745 by Lisa Unger. And Daisy says that on Facebook, the first chapter is gripping. Yes, yes. Ali says, "Glad I bought it yesterday." Absolutely. All right. So let me tell you about Thursday's book. On Thursday, we have Sandblast. All these devices, 4 devices hanging out on my desk. It's getting ridiculous. We have Sandblast. I hope you can see that. Well, yes, should be able to. By Al Pessin. So this is what's happening on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. This is what we will be reading from right here on First Chapter Fun on Instagram, Twitter, perhaps still a soft launch on Twitter, but definitely Facebook as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Apologies for disappearing under my desk to unplug the webcam and the technical difficulties that we experienced at the beginning. Never a dull moment on First Chapter Fun. And thank you very, very much for being here. Don't forget to go and check out Confessions on the 745 and to be here for Thursday's episode at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you had fun today. I certainly did, and I hope we'll see you on Thursday. So until then, as always, please stay safe, stay kind, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thank you for watching.